The project is Lifting Barriers, Educating Boys for Gender Equality, and that's led by UNESCO in partnership with Equimundo and University of East Anglia. And this project is implemented in Cambodia, Lesotho, and Malawi. And the second project is Accountability for Gender Equality in Education, AG, Bridging the Local, National, and Global, which is led by University College London in partnership with UNESCO and the University of Malawi. And this second project is implemented in Indonesia, Kenya, and Malawi. I will very briefly introduce the objectives of and background of these projects. So as the UNESCO 2022 report, Leave No Child Behind, Global Report on Boys' Engagement from Education, has shown, boys are at a high risk of repeating grades and failing to progress in their education and not learning while they're in school. And gendered norms and expectations are part of the factors that can negatively impact boys' motivation and their desire to learn. And while previously boys' engagement and dropouts were concerns mainly in high-income countries, now we can see several low and middle-income countries that have seen a reversal in gender gaps. And yet, despite increasing evidence of these dynamics, there's been limited research on effective strategies to combat boys' engagement from education, and the Lifting Barriers project really contributes to closing this research gap. So by addressing harmful masculine gender norms and promoting positive and inclusive masculinities, the project aims to reduce gender inequality and harmful masculine gender norms in and through education, and to strengthen education systems to become more gender transformative, efficient, safe, and inclusive. There are two major expected outcomes. Firstly, knowledge and skills development. Ministries, teachers, and school leaders and education personnel will gain a deep understanding, we hope, of how gender norms and expectations influence learners' experience, academic outcomes, and educational trajectories. They will develop the skills to deliver gender transformative strategies to promote positive and inclusive masculinities. Secondly, capacity building. The project will create global goods, including methodological and policy guides, as well as curriculum and training material, creating a model intervention that can be scaled, adapted, and widely replicated. And this project is really grounded in the belief that addressing boys' engagement from education and disadvantage in education is not a zero-sum game. Supporting boys does not mean that girls lose out and vice versa. Equal education opportunities benefit both girls and boys, the broader society, and foster gender equality. Now, the AG project is based on two observations. This is the second project. First, that measuring gender equality through education is nuanced and complex. Making progress through policy and practice towards gender equality through education requires an in-depth understanding of context, histories, and experience within countries. Second, documenting gender parity is not enough. Measures of gender parity, such as the number of boys and girls enrolled, progressing or completing education, are necessary but not sufficient for measuring gender equality in and through education. The project aims to improve how gender equality in through education is documented and addressed in the three countries mentioned earlier, while also aiming to scale the research findings for broader application in other countries. Using the AG framework that Elaine is going to talk to later, an indicator framework for participatory work on documenting and evaluating gender equality in through education. The focus of this project is really to auditing existing data, but also identifying missing data and enhancing data collection and usage across local, national, and global education processes. Now, the project activities involve developing local and national data dashboards, piloting new data sources and tools, including through the use of artificial intelligence, and also building capacities across government and civil society for improved decisions and policy making addressing gender equality in and through education. Importantly, this project really emphasizes participatory and cross-sectoral collaboration, and it engages a wide and diverse range of stakeholders, and this is including women's advocacy groups, youth organizations, faith-based groups, and government agencies across the education, gender, health, and social development sectors. Thank you, and back over to you, Aditi.
Thank you, Matthias, and thanks for that brief overview of both the projects. So now we'll be starting with a deeper dive into the first one, which is the Lifting Barriers, Educating Boys for Gender Equality one. So as part of this, we have three experts with three short presentations. So I will invite Sushan Acharya from the University of East Anglia to kindly introduce yourself, share your screen, and please start speaking. Yeah.
Thank you, Aditi. I'm from Kathmandu, Nepal, from Tribhuvan University, but right now I'm working as a consultant in this project for University of East Anglia, UK.
Wonderful. Would you share your screen, please, Susan? And
I thought I did. Okay. Yes.
yeah, it's coming through now. Not yet shared, but yeah, we can see them now.
You can see it?
Yes, but we can't see you. So if you want to put on your camera, otherwise it's up to you.
Oh, I have to now go back to. Okay. Now you can see me?
Yes, great. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to present the key findings and some backgrounds of the scoping study we did for this project, Lifting Barriers. Aditi,
Yes.
it's not moving. The slide is not moving.
Oh, you might. Is it in power? I mean,
Maybe you can stop sharing the screen. Sorry, Aditi, for the interruption. And you reshare the screen at the screen, not only the slides. So you can move between the slides.
So Aditi, would you rather share my presentation?
okay, I can do that.
Yeah, I think that will be more convenient.
Okay. Yeah, do you see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
So do you go to the, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. As Matthias already shortly introduced, this is part of the Lifting Barriers, Educating Boys for Gender Equality. And then the scoping study was conducted during April 24 to October 2024. And we selected actually the scoping study was conducted in Cambodia, India, Malawi, Portugal, UK, and Zambia. Can you move to the next slide, please? And the methodology was, we try to learn from the all the cases, the projects that we identified as working on gender and particularly on boys. In India, Cambodia, Malawi, Portugal, and UK, and Zambia. And what we did is we did the document analysis, and we also did key informant interviews and FZDs with the implementing organizations, representatives of the implementing organizations, and with some stakeholders, and online as well as face to face. In Malawi and UK, it was possible to do the workshops as well, but in other countries we did online. And in Cambodia also, we did the face-to-face interviews and the workshops as well. And then research and validation workshop was also held in Cambodia and Malawi. Please, next slide, please. And we started with 3 research questions. First one was to identify key elements that was promising or proven to be, contributing to gender transformative and innovation in education, particularly helping to keep boys engaged in school and learning and promote gender equitable attitudes, values, and behaviors. And then attached with this was we explored what were the enabling factors. That was one of the key questions, and as well as the challenges in implementation. And the second research question was, to what extent can innovation that addresses gender norms and expectations, including restrictive and harmful masculinities, keep boys engaged in school and learning, and promoting gender equitable attitudes, values, and behaviors, and how is such impact measured? And third one was the factors that enable, incentivize, or impede the scaling, because scaling is one of the major aspects of this KICS project. So we focused on this question as well and explored what really helped and what really didn't help in scaling up. So next slide, please.
1 second.
And these are the programs that we explored in Malawi. It was the Very Young Adolescent VYA program implemented by COVAC and Ikumundu. And then in Zambia, it was Connect with Respect, UNESCO's program. And in India, it's ICRW supported program, the Gender Equity Movement in Schools. And in United Kingdom, it was Lifting Limits and other programs. And in Portugal, it was Happy Schools Initiatives and implemented by Open University and then supported by UNESCO. And in Cambodia, it's the Life Skill for Equality Project, LSEP, implemented by Room to Read. Okay. Next. Okay. And what we found is what really influenced boys' disengagement in education was, first of all, the boys, as Matthias already mentioned, that boys' absence and dropout was a concern. And the several factors contributed to it, the pressure, the family financial needs, and then another was the peer influence. Mostly boys were disengaged through activities like substance abuse, gaming, and social media, and they started distracting from schools, particularly in Cambodia and Zambia. We found it, and then often the financial aid programs focused on girls' education, and this kind of led to sense of inequity and resentment, and some boys were discouraged from continuing due to lack of support. And this particular came in Malawi and Zambia, and strict teaching methodologies. It's rote memorization, lack of program that resonate with boys' needs, and limited safe spaces for boys, and absence of inclusive activities, particularly raised by our Indian and UK participants, and societal expectations. I know the what we call the harmful masculinities, and they were expected to be resilient, strong, and then left without supportive structures. And what happened due to this is it affected their mental health, and then they started having poor self-esteem, and it particularly came in Malawi and UK. And the boys often faced peer and teacher-led violence, because since they were expected to be resilient and strong, they were, the victims of the violence as well. And educational programs focused on gender equality didn't engage boys effectively, with many seeing program as girls' issues. So they saw the program, everybody saw the programs as girls' issues, so boys were left out. Next slide, please. And then what strategies actually worked to address boys' disengagement and promote gender equality? We explored that aspects. And but we have to still be aware that there were hardly, and very few interventions that really focus on boys only, solely on boys. But still, the programs we selected, they did have that aspects where they particularly supported boys. And the most effective strategies were embedded as a whole school approach. And I'll going to discuss about what this whole school approach meant. And interactivity is a key component of engaging sessions. In the sessions of the interventions, the gender equality sessions, the sessions were more interactive, so the boys could talk about their issues as well. And so it proved to be promising, and built-in opportunities for reflection for participants to deepen their understanding and relation to the issue discussed. Since it was interactive, since they were mostly interactive, the participant could reflect on their own self and their own life. So it really helped. And flexibility in the program design is paramount. Mostly the funded programs are quite restrictive in terms of what they do, what they don't do, and in what strategies they should use. But all of the programs that we explored, they had some flexibility, so they could adapt and change as the context demanded. So that was also the key. And facilitators, if they were teachers, they really needed appropriate training and ongoing backstopping support. Next slide. And then the whole school approach. What we mean by whole school approach is, in whole school approach, the curriculum design, teacher training, CPD, and then also the buy-in from senior management, adaptation of school policy, awards, and accreditations. They all mattered, and then we put them in a whole school. Some programs actually touch in all these aspects. And family and also wider community, not the whole school didn't only mean the family, I mean the school alone, but outside of school as well, which is the family and the community, because community and the family also had a huge influence on girls and boys education. So when you say wider, whole school, the community and the family is also included. So you can see the verbatims that the participants that we collected from the participants from Portugal and UK. They also emphasize on whole school approach. Next slide, please. And key stakeholders. So the key stakeholders depended on the reason and the context of intervention. So in some programs, the focus was teachers and students. So teachers, for example, in India, the more focus was on teacher. And in some, the outside facilitators came in, but the additional stakeholders who were significant included primary stakeholders, such as parents and guardians. And it was particularly found in LSCP in Cambodia and GEMS in India, and local organizations with similar goals. And it was in India as well. They very closely, ICRW closely worked with local NGOs who were working for years in this particular area in gender issues. And key members of the community, like chief, community leaders, and role models, and school advisory boards, curriculum developers, Ministry of Education are key to long-term success. And these stakeholders were particularly important for implementation as well as scaling up. Next slide, please. And flexibility. The flexibility and pivot in different direction, if they could, as I already said, that they could, adapt and go to different direction as the context and the situation demanded. That was very important. And scaling remained a key challenge for initiatives that respond to boys' education disengagement and attainment. And horizontal scaling was common. If we do in one school or one district, and they could, copy the same, do in another school. But the vertical scaling was very crucial. So like national and subnational institutionalization buy-in, school should be considered crucial in relieving resources pressure for on-the-ground practitioners noted in our study. And then ICRW, particularly in the case of James, they were really from the very beginning into this. They were involving like national and subnational institutions, the government institutions, government resource people. So actually they were able to do the resource sharing and teacher training. And functional scale up. We also found the functions which is like achieved through curriculum development and teacher training, provided practitioners are given opportunity for ongoing professional development. continued professional development in this area. And forms of scaling identified are open sourcing, teacher training, curriculum development, accreditation. Accreditation particularly meant that, when teachers took the training and you wanted some kind of, recognition. So that accreditation meant that in this case, and social franchising and influencing public policy. Next slide, please. And then the participant suggestion for best practices were built-in comprehensive training for educators, pre-service and in-service. I mean, all these programs were like, though it was programs, it was like a project-based. So what the participants really thought important is to inbuilt this kind of training in pre-service and in-service teacher training, and then have the regular mentoring and communities of practice, and build a communities of practitioners through the communities of practice, and provide specialized training in contexts like, for example, sexual health and pedagogy to build confidence and skills, and acknowledge and resource training. Accreditation, financial incentives was also important. Knowledge of safeguarding and referral systems. So sometimes they needed this as well, because the schools couldn't handle some cases, so they needed this as well. And then giving example like pre-service and in-service, in the case of India, they were really working with in-service government teacher training to build in this gender related, the training skills in the government training, and also in the school curriculum. And then taking a whole school approach and whole curriculum approach. So in these programs, since it was a short-term program, there's different kind of curriculum and different kind of sessions were delivered, mostly with like after school sessions or holiday, using the holidays and etc. But the suggestion was to embed the gender transmitted lessons into curriculum across subjects, irrespective of the areas of study. They suggested that it should be embedded in all subjects. And then also the classroom practices. They suggested that the classroom practices should be more inclusive, and meaningful engagement with communities, and work actively with parents, familiarize them with content and aims of program, and collaborate potential partners with aligned aims and visions. So these were the suggestions that the participants gave for best practices. Thank you. I think this is the last slide.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Wonderful. So I think we'll take the other presentations from the same project as well. Now, I believe it's somebody from Cambodia who's going to come in. Let me find Fori is here. So if you can share your screen and just feel free to start presenting whenever you're ready.
All right. Can you see my share screen clearly and hear me clearly?
We can hear you well as well.
All right. So thank you so much, Susan, and thank you so much, everyone. Good morning, good
Sorry
afternoon.
to interrupt, Fori, but we can't see you. I don't know if you want to turn on your camera.
I think my internet bandwidth at my side is quite low, so I try to keep my vocal clear enough.
No worries. Yeah, please go ahead.
All right. So, yep. So again, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this Knowledge Cafe. My name is Puri, and I'm a former research fellow at CDRI. So earlier, you have heard from Susan learnings of different intervention from different countries, from Cambodia, India, Malawi, UK, even Zambia. But now I will just focus on sharing some key insight from our Cambodia case study on boy education disengagement, but not really about intervention, but the case of disengagement itself. And I will quickly go through, cover four main things, just a little bit background context of Cambodia, the method that we use, some key findings and recommendation. But I will pause briefly for some reflection at the end. Before we begin, a quick check, even online. So raise your hand or simply react if you have a son, brother, or nephew in school. And how many of you have son, brothers, or nephew in school? Maybe a quick reaction online or a clap. And how many of you believe that nowadays girls are still facing more educational barrier than boys? And how many of you thinks that boys drop out because they're just simply lazy or uninterested in school? Sorry, I see on my screen and I couldn't see any reaction, so I hope Aditi can give me a wrap up letter after this
I think
presentation.
we had lots of thumbs up
Okay, thank you.
across.
Thank you for the interaction. So these are very common perceptions, and today's finding will help us unpack some of them. So just a quick global context. Globally, boys' disengagement is not new, but it is growing. Boys are more likely to repeat grades, less likely to complete secondary school, and underrepresented in even tertiary education. Importantly, this issue is most visible at the secondary level nowadays, and which is exactly where our Cambodia case study focuses. Um, but why are boys disengaging from education? It's not just one thing, it's multiple factors at play, from family, at school environment to broader societal influence. And for our study, we use Bronfen-Bronner ecological system theory to understand this layer. And because due to time constraint, I couldn't provide all the detailed explanation, but we keep it for the discussion after the presentation. So this ecological model helps us see how state, school, community, peer families, and even boys themselves interact to shape their educational experience. And each layer brings its own challenges and opportunities. There are a few concepts in this study, but I don't think we will have time to go through all the concepts. But what I want to summarize in here is that disengagement, boy disengagement is gender. It is shaped by gender norm and expectation of masculinity. And that gender norms and masculinity can vary through different contexts and time specific. So some country might perceive boy or might have some sort of gender expectation for boy differently from girl, while the other might be similar. But again, this kind of gender norms and masculinity can be context and time specific. And these norms and masculinity concept can unintentionally push boy away from school. And that's why it comes to our study. Our study aimed to answer three main questions. Basically, what is the current situation of boy education in Cambodia in terms of their participation, their learning performance, and completions? What are the factors that drive their engagement or disengagement? And so far, what are the policies or interventions that are working and potentially can scale up? So for our study, we used a scoping review plus an explanatory sequential design of mixed method, where we have both quantitative and qualitative data. But for quantitative data, we use the secondary data from CPLUM, PISA, and MIS as a source of data. But for the qualitative, we conducted in a more comprehensive way. So of course, on top of the secondary data from MS, UIS, CPLUM, and PISA, we have that scoping review of different policies and different interventions that are implemented by different NGO in Cambodia. But we also conducted FGD with different groups of students, with the boys who already dropped out of school, low performing boy, high performing boys, and even their parents and teachers at different level. So this allows us to capture both data trends and life experience of participants. On top of the FGD and KII, one key tool that we use is called social network mapping, or I'm going to call in short S&M, which help us understand who influences boy from families and teacher to peers and community leader. We also map a typical day in student life, revealing how how each student, especially boys, spend their time throughout the day. And it's actually very eye-opening to see how they spend their time and revealing how they balance school, work, rest, and distraction. And often schooling compete with many other demands in Cambodia context. So now let's move on into our findings and discussion. What did we learn about boy engagement in education in Cambodia? So drawing preliminary on data from MS, from UIS, and from CPLUM, we can see that at primary level, we see near parity level between boys and girls in terms of access, but at the secondary level, gaps are widened. Boys enroll less, perform worse, and drop out more than girls, especially in the rural areas. Learning data from CPLUMs and PISA also show that boys are falling behind across reading, math, and science, with the biggest gap in literacy. And the consistency and breadth of this finding points to a systematic challenge in Cambodia, where boys are falling behind nearly every domain and across diverse background, but most acutely in literacy-based domain. In terms of completion rate also declined sharply after primary school, and female students consistently have a higher completion rate than their counterpart. Boys are also significantly more likely to drop out especially from lower secondary level, which is a critical transition point. And we can also see that at this lower secondary level, boys significantly more likely to drop than girls at a very significant level. This kind of dropout rates are also higher at the rural area. And just like I mentioned earlier, the starting point in Cambodia is when it's the transition where students finish their primary level and start to enter grade 6 and 7, where they enter the lower secondary level. But why are this happening? Our analysis also saw multiple interacting factors across meso, micro, and macro levels. So at the micro levels, all participants, including the male student themselves, indicate that individual factors were the most pressing contributor to education disengagement. However, it is important to recognize that these factors do not operate in isolation. The experiences and challenges by boys at this individual level are often deeply intertwined with their family circumstances and the influences of their peer groups. So now let's look into a little bit more detail at each of this level. So at the individual level, many study participants from school and NGO reported that boys enter lower secondary education already burdened by poor foundational skill from their primary school level. And this deficit make it difficult for students to cope with the new academic demand at the lower secondary level. They also have poor study habit, which further exacerbate their academic difficulty. And there's also challenges in transition and barriers when they transition into a lower secondary level. Besides that poor foundational skill, both early school leaver and low-performing boy also admitted that they also lack of motivation and the persistence to actually pursue more education by themselves. In fact, many school level and sub-national level stakeholders also noticed the trend that families and community are increasingly placing higher educational expectation on girls, seeing them as more disciplined and academically committed. However, if boys and their family perceive limited future job opportunities or low wage, even with higher education, their motivation to remain engaged in school will likely to be considerably low. Another individual factor is the low self-image, confidence, and emotional well-being of boys. our S&M activity and FGD with early school leavers and low performing boy reveal a recurring theme of a low self-image and academic confidence. This boy group often describe themselves in disparaging terms and express the belief that they were inherently incapable of succeeding in school. And compounding these challenges is reported limited communication between boys and their families regarding educational matters. And this absence of dialogue between boys and their parents, especially with the father, diminishes boy accountability and encouragement, leaving boy feeling isolated in their academic journey. Another factor is the distracting and competing interests. Instead of setting up, so nowadays, of course, we're moving on to online class using smartphone as a tool for learning. However, it also gives some digital distraction for them when it's come to gaming and social media. However, for boy, it's something interesting that for them, smartphone offer immediate entertainment and social connection that can feel more rewarding than studying. And for them, online gaming also provide a sense of competition, achievement, and peer belonging, which boys themselves find somehow almost all the time find missing or even restricted in the classroom setting. So, and beside this kind of digital gamings and social media, sport also emerged as a double-edged sword in Cambodia. So while participants in sport provide social and physical benefits, some students describe becoming overly immersed or using sport as a mean to earn extra income through betting. And another contributing factor was the influence of materialism. Several boys, parents, and study participants at their school and subnational level voiced the same observation. I think last but not least of this individual factor, it's also related to health, nutrition, and the substance use of some boy across some setting in Cambodia, but we found mostly at the rural aspect of the country. Due to time, I will just move on a little bit faster. So these are just the wrap up of the individual factors that contributing boys to disengage from education. And now let's move on to family levels. So at the family level, the key drivers include economic pressure and livelihood demands, where there's family poverty and economic security. So boys face stronger pressure to work due to gender livelihood expectation on them and perceive higher value in manual labor than girls because they have more strength in doing more laborious work than girl. And there's also high educational costs and low perceived return, which lead many rural families to prioritize short-term survival over schooling. The second family-related factor is the low parental engagement, and the value that they put on education is quite very low. So if boy benefit most from close parental supervision, while low expectation on them create to more disengagement and increase the risk of dropout. And the absence of fathers in boy education narrative is a very critical gap and lack of motivation for them to continue their studying. The third factor is also related to family structure and their household instability. So household instability such as parental migration, divorce, or caregiving burdens also undermine boys' educational outcomes. And father involvement is also similar to the previous factor. Even in small way, can significantly boost boy academic achievement and self-esteem a lot in continue their education. Parenting style and psychosocial climate also affect how boy engage in education. And boy academic success is not just a simply a matter of ability, but also deeply shaped by how they are treated and supported at home. And without positive reinforcement at home or emotional scaffolding by their parent, boys may adopt more of avoiding coping strategy. So they do not want to really do homework and catching up with the attendance and asking more questions at school. So without this kind of positive reinforcement at home, they are very vulnerable to be in school and also express more aggression at in the classroom. There's also a cross-field site in Cambodia. Many respondents also observe a notable shift in how household and even at the community attitude toward educational investment by genders. Participants across all 5 provinces consistently observed that this trend has changed in the past 5 to 10 years, with growing attention, resources, and program now directed toward girls' education, but not really about boys. So the boys quite feel really left behind. And if you have the time to read through this quote, you can feel that even the sibling in the same household, they start to feel like why are the sister getting all of this supports from their schools, from the programs, but not they themselves? Even they go to the same school, face the same family situation. And this again just a wrap up of the family related factor that contribute to boy education disengagement. Peer also contribute to this kind of disengagement for boys. So I will just move on quickly. Related to peer, it's also there's a pressure to engage in counter academic success behavior where they go and play truant from class and even use substance and form various form of risk-taking behavior. They also value leisure, entertainment, and street-based social activity more than academic success. And there's more focus on material, gaining material and status in the society that can negatively influence boy engagement. Earlier, all of those 3 main factors are just at the micro level. Moving on to meso level, where we look at the relationship between school and community and how this interaction within the 2 environments can influence boys' education disengagement. So at the school level, there's a factor of chronic shortage of qualified teachers, especially at the rural area, was consistently raised across school and provincial levels interview, and this shortage often lead to overcrowded classroom, increased workload for existing teacher, and the hiring of underqualified and untrained individual. Participants also expressed concern over the quality and the shortage of school infrastructure and environment, support service and policy. And there's also a role of this kind of private tutoring and reinforcement that kind of reinforce the educational inequalities. There's also the school climate and safety, where there's also the emergence of this kind of bullying inside the class or the community. And last but not least, it's the academic demand and transition challenges. The community level also play a role in here. For the community, education was often seen as the exclusive domain of the household or the state rather than a collective responsibility. And participants also highlighted how the availability of alternative income generating activity within the communities, like as construction, rubber tapping, and lifting things, or working in factories or air conditioning repair, presented an alternative way to school and can generate income in a much quicker way than staying in school. Boys were frequently expected to also demonstrate independence, toughness, and the ability to contribute economically from a young age. So this expectation often socially reinforced, which lead to internal and external pressure that conflict with the demand of formal schooling.
Furi, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you can start wrapping up just in the interest of time, because we have a lot of
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So these are just the micro system where girls may have fewer opportunity to engage in physical or informal labor, but this in a way, this very constraint also allow them to stay in school longer and maintain stronger educational trajectory than boys. However, if you look at more closely at the student-centered perspective, for high-performing boy, for them, it's more of the individual and family level factor that contribute to how they can keep up with engaging in school. But if we compare to low-performing and dropout, it's mostly at the family level factor, school and their peers, and lastly, it's their individual and level factor. We also asked the female student to observe how high-performing boys and low-performing boys differs, and these suggest some of the characteristics from the female student observation. Just a little bit of key triangulation because we use this kind of mixed method. So our statistical analysis confirmed this pattern. Boys, older students, and those from poorer households are significantly more likely to drop out. And this risk is higher for students with disabilities, those in rural areas, but those who are minority ethnic groups, and those engaged in paid work, while parental education reduce this kind of risk. We also look at the policy and intervention at different organizations or NGOs. So for Cambodia, Cambodia has strong policy framework and many interventions, including scholarships, school feeding programs, and re-entry programs. However, three gap remains. There's still limited gender sensitivity for boys, limited implementation at scale, and there's also concerns on the sustainability challenges for NGO program, even though they are solving potentials. And so based on this finding, we propose 9 recommendations. But however, due to time, I will just highlight a few key ones in here. So the first one, we need to strengthen early learning and transition to secondary, provide targeted support and mentoring for boys, improve school environments and teaching quality, address social and emotional needs, engage fathers and communities, expand flexible learning pathway. And importantly, we need to advocate gender equality for both boys and girls, not just boys and not just girls, but both at the same time, and not as a trade-off, but as a shared goals. So if you could change one thing tomorrow to keep boys more in school, what would it be? And again, I will just finish my presentation with this. Educating boys is not about shifting attention away from girls. It's about ensuring that no learners is left behind because of who they are or how society expects of them. And for more information, you can scan on this QR code. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Puri. And I know that we have a very short final presentation about this project, after which we can take all the questions. So if we can have that from Sydney. And just to say that we're running a little behind on time, so we'll just keep it short and then jump right into discussion. And then we have a second presentation on the AGE project as well. So Sydney, if you can quickly take us through your presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Aditi. Can you share it from your end, if that's all right?
Just give me a second.
Okay.
Sydney. Okay.
All right. While Aditi is sharing,
Yeah.
just to introduce myself, my name is Sydney Chumbu from Center for Alternatives for Victimized Women and Children, in short, CAVWOC. We work in partnership with Ecomundo and UNESCO. So I'm here just to briefly present on the tools that were developed for the intervention. So the tools were generally developed for a gender transformative initiative, engaging boys, educators, families, and systems to advance a gender equality education, as it is a multi-level approach, as we identified that it is important to include and involve the families, educators, and different stakeholders to be able to advance the gender equality in education. Next slide, please. So the first document that was developed was the Educator's Guide, which is more of a resource to provide to promote rather gender transformative and inclusive pedagogy, and equipping educators with strategies to create gender equitable learning environments that can support boys' growth and academic success. So it can also be able to be used as a teacher training tool by tertiary institutions and as well as ministries. The second one was the in classroom modules, which was also to be used by the educators to deliver segmented lesson plans, activities that support life skills, development, and gender equality, and some topics which included communication, relationships, and it also encourages full critical reflection among students. And it is more of a tool which promotes generally positive masculinity as well, among other things in the gender equality. So, coming from the educator's guide, the educators now have the segmented lesson plans that they can follow. Right. The third tool was the Parents and Caregivers Guide, as which was also noted from the scoping study, that parents are also vital to the life of a student to promote education in Malawi, and as also how Hori pointed out, the same issue in Cambodia, that parents need to be involved as well in their child's education. So this tool is a structured lesson guides for families to engage them in discussions about the importance of education for both boys and girls. And it also strengthens community support as we involve as well. The parents are from the community and we involve the community leaders as well. So this tool was developed for their engagement in the children's education. And the fourth one was the Boys Club Implementation Guide, as we developed some boys clubs where boys can freely speak on issues affecting them and can really participate, as we discovered that some boys may not really feel comfortable to air out issues in presence of girls. So we created a space where boys can really feel free to speak on their issues. So it uses interactive activities to build social emotional skills, as we found out from the scoping study that due to limited and strict delivering of lessons from the teachers, boys were not really able to open up. So this uses interactive activities, and it encourages peer learning and reflection. Next slide, please. So last one was the teaching and learning materials guidance. Generally, as it is a multi-level approach, we also saw the importance of involving the different stakeholders and ministries of education and other curriculum developers, so they can generally use this as a guide, and it provides examples of how to integrate masculinities and gender equality in curricula across diverse subjects, and it ensures sustainability and a scale at national level. They can always go back to this document to see on what issues they can integrate while reviewing their curriculums. And it is paired with a training package that can also be adapted to a local context if used anywhere. So next slide, please. So the key takeaway from this is that these tools are an integrated in a multi-level approach, which involves the whole school approach, the communities, and the different stakeholders outside these communities and schools, which are the ministries and the other stakeholders. So it is also a practical, and they're also practical and scalable tools, and they have an ability to be adapted in a context and in every country that is willing to adopt this intervention. So boys as partners in gender equality. So as we are focusing on boys, Pori put it best that we're not really leaving out the girls as well. So we are promoting gender equality to involve both girls and boys. So this was the presentation of the tools. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. So we'll now just spend 5 minutes on any questions, but please continue the conversation in the chat, and then we'll go on to the next presentation. And then in the end, if we have more time, we can come back to this one as well. So I'll just read out a couple of questions that we've already received. And I'm sorry, but I'll have to stick to time because we're already behind by a good 10-12 minutes. And partners from UNESCO, Equimundo, others, Cambodia, you can also put responses in the chat later if you want to continue the conversation. So I see there's a question. I'll just go into the most relevant questions. We have a question from Elaine, importance of online gaming, etc., linked to factors affecting boys' disengagement, and how much was misogyny and anger at girls and women a feature of the game played, the chats engaged in, etc. And then we have one more question which says, do you think a comparative lens could help distinguish which factors are truly gender specific versus more structural? Maybe I'll hand over to partners. Feel free to unmute and answer those, and I'll just read through what else is coming.
Yeah, Aditi, maybe I can take the last one first.
Yeah, sure.
On those structural factors. So what we try to avoid doing the case study and doing our research is sort of pitching girls against boys and boys against girls. So we were looking really into the factors that were not comparing both of them, girls and boys, but rather looking into the factors that affected boys. And we looked both in those that are specific to boys and those that are linked to more structural factors. And I'll just give an example. So you might think, okay, poverty, that's a structural issue in countries, and that might draw boys out of school. But it is also very specific to boys because there's an interaction between gender norms and expectations and those structural factors. So there's this expectations that boys would be the provider at the home, and so they would be pulled out of school because of poverty in order to contribute to the livelihoods. They also might perceive that education is less of value to them because they have to become those providers. So we were looking into those relations. I think maybe Puri, you are best placed to answer the question on the gaming, what came out of the Cambodia case study on the gaming during your interviews.
Yep, thank you for the question, Elaine and Matthias. So from our data, there was actually no discussion on whether they play some sort of game that feature girls or women, or whether they have some sort of chat related to women and girls. But so far, I think if I remember correctly, they said they have some sort of gaming groups, different gaming groups, but those the games that they play are more like action-oriented games, and mostly the members of those group are just between their male peers, not really about women's. And what they would like to specify is by engaging in that kind of gaming activity, they feel a sense of more social connection with their peers, because in class, this is something important to review our curriculums and activities in class, because for them, this kind of active activities and discussion are somehow restricted by the teachers. So that's why they turn toward this kind of gaming groups where they can connect more with their peer and feel more rewarding than studying.
Great, thank you. And I think there's just one more question in the chat, but I suggest, Matthias, somebody from the team responds in the chat. I'll just hand over to the AG project because I do want to be fair and give them the time, and then we can spend more time in the end on a joint conversation, if that's okay. So I think it's Elaine who's going to start us off. So for everyone... Yeah, go ahead.
Aditi, I'm just wondering if I should be extremely brief so that we get the major time to Christy and Nisa, who will report on the Indonesia case study.
Okay, absolutely.
So maybe I just won't share my slides. I'll just make a few additional comments to those that Matthias made about the General AG project. what I wanted to pull out is some of the unique features of this project that are using reflections on data, the idea that understanding gender inequalities and gender equalities in and through education is not just about documenting gender parity or lack of parity in access or participation or outcomes, but is understanding a raft of social and economic and political and individual factors, both in the education system and beyond the education system. But that we mustn't become overwhelmed by this range of data. And what the project is working on is, I think, a very unique and innovative engagement between academics in different kinds of settings, between staff in international organizations, and we're partnering with UNESCO, and between stakeholders in data, in government ministries, in developing indicators, and all of us discussing together and reflecting on data. And we've had some very interesting innovations that we've been able to develop in how data is presented, and I can show some of examples of those slides from Indonesia if there is time, in showing a more complex presentation, which I hope is helpful for the government of Indonesia. This is just based on cross-national data, but can then also be further developed using the national data ecosystem. And then very rich participatory discussions. And we've been doing this comparing Indonesia, Kenya, and Malawi, also drawing on insights from comparative cross-national discussion. And I think in that process, we're kind of shifting the boundaries around how you use data. We have a strand of the project that is looking at how we can use AI to analyze curriculum documents and policies and draw out some of the gender issues and build an indicator around that. And also how you can enhance discussion of data and see who is being included and what issues are not being included. So we feel we're expanding the space of conversation, the richness of the data, and so improving the processes of policy making. And now let me hand to Christy and Nisa for an in-depth presentation of the work that has been being done in Indonesia. And if anybody's got a question of some of the data representations, we can look at my slides of those later. Thanks, Aditi.
Thanks so much, Elaine, for the flexibility. I hope we have time to come back to some of that in the end. So Nisa and Christy, over to you.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Thank you, Aditi. So allow me to introduce myself. I'm Christy from UNESCO office in Jakarta. And thank you to Elaine for giving an opening of the AG work in Indonesia. So I and Nisa, our National 5 Study Group, will be presenting on what the Indonesians' context and the processes so far of this research. So, but I will be providing an overview of how the processes has been in national level, and Nisa will be providing an insights on how this data and how AG frameworks has been useful in subnational level. So I'll be sharing my screen. I hope you can already see it. But before we go into details into what AG means to us, I'd like to invite you, the participants, to go to a journey with me to a region in Central Java, Indonesia. So Central Java is one of our province that has been selected for the sites of the study alongside 3 other provinces and 3 other regions in Indonesia. Just to begin with, I'd like to introduce you to Dita, an Indonesian girl a 12-year-old Indonesian girl from a regency in Central Java, that she's currently studying in primary school, and she's aspiring to be a researchers and scientists after she graduates. And so she lives with her mother, and unfortunately, she's living with a single mother in a female-led household in Indonesia, which is very common, and to self-food in the elementary school where she studies. But fast forward, she's actually been very interested to learn to be a scientist, and she's now in high school and hopes that she can apply for applied life science major, which she hopes to learn from the university. But unfortunately, due to the shortage of available campuses and majors in her regency, let's say in one of the regency in Central Java, she's not able to go to the university, and because of the lack of support as well to afford the tuitions in the university, she has to turn down her dream, and at the end supports the family and postponing her study to the university by selling in our local markets and delaying her study for 1 or 2 years or even more. So the story of Dita is actually a reality of our situation in Indonesia, especially in Central Java. And I'd like to invite you, maybe providing your response in the chat, what risk factors that you think Dita has in relation to gender and educations. If you can share your insights on the chat box. Unfortunately, since I'm sharing, I don't think I'd be able to see that, but I'll be able to check in during the later part of the presentation. So when you see the story of Dita, who is not able to, although she's attending primary school level up to secondary level, but fails to transition to higher educations and get a decent job, what do you think there are risk factors that Dita has, especially considering there is risks such as child marriage as well as poverty? So it would be great if you can share your insights on the chat box. And I don't know, Aditi, if you can also see them through going to the chat box.
Yeah, I'll read out anything that appears, Christy.
Sure. Thank you very much.
I don't see anything yet. So
I think we can
fully share the dashboard. Yeah, you can.
Sure. Yeah. Right. So that's actually the story of Dita actually provides name to the data. So if we usually only see parity, we understand data on gender educations. We talk a lot about parity, but the issues on gender equality in education actually stretch beyond primary level attendance and participations. In the three sides, we often find girls failing to transitions to higher university because there is lack of resources in secondary school, as well as risk of child marriage that contributing to the out of school children or out of school girls with different driving factors of both girls and boys. And this is the reality that happened in Central Java, but also in other regions that we went to, such as, for example, Bali, as well as Lampung, the three regions that we visited. So from 2024, we have had different processes in Indonesia, starting from national level to subnational level workshops that use the AG frameworks to discuss the gender equality in education issue, as well as what data and indicators that are actually can reflect the situation and reality in Indonesia. And on that process, we're guided by research advisory groups that is comprised by different organizations from Ministry of Education, research centers, women-led organizations, youth organizations, and even United Nations organizations working on coordination of gender equality. And the research so far, the process so far has been very useful in building the community of practice on gender and education data. And in details that in Indonesia, actually the AG framework has helped to provide a set of organizing idea and connect the dots to bring the data that is already being collected and highlight some gaps to be addressed. It helps to strengthen the understanding among community of practice across different sectors in gender equality and education. And it also sends a strong key message that education data and education issue is not inseparable from other sectors such as child protections, women empowerment, health, which AGE actually helps to unfold and to connect the dot in Indonesia. And if you see that in the slides, there are 3 data points. One is actually the education indicators of one of the regions in Indonesia. It mostly talks about the participation rate of primary level. But unfortunately, it yet to touch upon different sectors or different factors that can influence them. But if you see in the middle, it's actually the education report scorecard that Indonesia has. It actually has different levels of indicators that can help measure the learning experience of girls and boys in schools. And one of them is already integrating gender perspective or other factors that can influence gender equality, such as the safety learning environments. And lastly, it's actually the Women's Life Experience Survey, a data that is sitting in the other sector than education, the women's empowerment and child protection sector. That actually also the data completely sitting outside the education sector when you do the gender analysis. And when we did the research in Indonesia, participants actually shows that also showed and expressed that there should be a linkage between these 3 data points or even beyond that to be able to completely understand the gender equality issues in Indonesia. And on top of that, because Indonesia has a very robust data system already across different sectors, and it actually helps to promote the integrations of different data points in Indonesia. And that's what happens in national level so far. And we also went through the subnational level that goes beyond 3 regions, that goes beyond the national level, including 3 regions such as including Lampung Province, Central Java, and Bali, and into the regencies such as West Pesisir Regencies, Pemalang, as well as Buleleng, which is each of them actually has its own nuances and some of the issues that have emerged from these 3 regions, highly, for example, related to out-of-school children. So AG, for example, has helped us to, for example, know that from the participants where we conducted the AG workshops expressed that when they, for example, want to work on out-of-school children in their regions, they want to know and they want to understand why girls and boys dropping out from schools in different times. And they want to know if there is different factors that influence that. So these conversations, these workshops actually help us to map and indicators and to actually detailing the indicators that have already been there and set by government for Indonesia, for example, but by, for example, advocating for detailed contributing factors of why girls and boys are dropping out of schools and how it can actually help local governments to deal with the situation. So, for example, in the 3 regions, girls have been identified to be exposed to the risk of child marriage, and while boys to the risk of child labor. And linking to that, I'd like to invite my colleague Lisa, if you're there, to guide us, on why the gender perspective is very important on discussing gender and education data and what happens in the 3 regions. Thank you. Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Krusty. And I'm sorry that I couldn't open my camera because of signal issues. Thank you so much. I think the sixth area, it is important to note to highlight again what Krusty has been presented, that actually Indonesia is not currently, the availability of data is not the major issue at the moment. But then what we found, interestingly, from this AGE project is, can we go back to the previous slide? Yeah. What we found important is the gender perspective. So through the workshops in the 6 areas, we found that actually using gender lens is something that can be improved in viewing the data, so that because in Indonesia and maybe in other parts of the world as well, that girls tend to outperform boys in task score, and also the access to education is increasing from year to year in terms of gender parity. But it's not enough. And then it is important to also communicate to the local and also national policymakers that the goal of gender in education is not actually to just increase access, but to ensure that education can benefit girls as much as benefit the boys. So by understanding, by using the lens, we can also critically discuss whether the learning experience, the methods that teachers use are relevant for boys and girls. One of the stories that we got from the field is that collaborative learning, for instance, are more favorable for girls than for boys. So this is important findings as well when we use the lens of gender. And then the AGEE also increased the perspective of intersectionality, so that teachers, participants in the workshop, including policymakers at the local levels from different sectors, also aware that it's not just about being a girl or being a boy, but being a girl from specific socioeconomic status, for instance, may be more vulnerable than others. And also another similar findings what we got across the 6 regions is that they also understand that there should be more indicators for assessing gender in and through education. It's not enough just to count the participation and also task score. Can we go to the next slide? And as Krusty mentioned earlier, that we had 6 areas, and 3 of them are more rural compared to the other 3. So in Central Java, in Bali and Lampung, we selected areas that tend to be more rural than the other 3 cities. So when in the beginning, we probably just assume that, they share similar pattern because the area was not too far, and the 6 areas are not actually extreme to one another. So there's no outliers. They tend to be comparable. So in Pemalang, in Central Java, however, even though they look similar, but after we go deeper and have a more in-depth discussions with the participants and have interactions through the workshops, we found that there are different characteristics between the 3 areas. In Pemalang, even though poverty is the main issues, keep raised by the participants. And the poverty is one of the factor that intersect with gender very significantly. Being girl from a low-income family increase their vulnerability to leave the schools and to the child marriage, as Krusty mentioned. Meanwhile, for boys, they tend to be a child labor, like Krusty mentioned. That's not the case in Bali. In Bali, poverty was not even mentioned. Instead, the customary tradition, customary values and practices were repeatedly mentioned as something that hinder girls to pursue and to have a high aspiration in education. Meanwhile, in Pesisir Barat, this area is more isolated compared to the other two. So geographically isolated, coupled with poverty, become a very serious barrier to education. This is not about participation, not about access, but if we go deeper, this is about aspiration, about whether or not they are interested to continue their education or not. Because the opportunity is very limited in this area, so they don't really see what is the point of having higher education. So these are the different characteristics that we found in 3 areas. Should I? Yeah. Do you want to say something about this, Christy? This is just the insights from our workshop. We did community mapping and like a full day activities and opportunity for participants to be more aware and learn how to use the gender lens and gender perspective in education. Do you want to add anything with this slide?
Yes. Thank you very much, Nisa. So to add to Nisa's, so where do I actually see the linkage between the issues that Nisa presented and indicators? That actually means that the gender parity indicators that we use largely in Indonesia, and also the gender perspective has also been integrated into the education data system or data ecosystem. There's actually a need and realizations that one size doesn't fit for all. Indicators that needs to be used to measure learning experience for boys and girls vary across these regions, meaning that, for example, when we discuss about the issues of lack of resources, such as in Bandar Lampung, different indicators might also be reflected in other regions where customary practices is found to be more challenging, but also in the areas where poverty comes as the main topic. So this actually helped us not only to start the discussions, but also to realize that the indicators should also goes beyond the parity in subnational level, and that does not mean that actually new data is not available. Indonesia again is ranked as one of the in ASEAN as a good data producers, but also to connect the use of the data and promote the use of data for education policy, especially to link to more gender responsive or hopefully the transformative education policy. So I think that will be all from us. Otherwise, if you have any addition, Manisa, or maybe we can conclude.
Thank you, Christy, but I think I don't have anything else to add at the moment.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nisa, Elaine, Christy. And I hope if participants have any questions, you can just put them in the chat. We just have a couple of minutes more, but we can just have one open round of questions, discussion from this project. If there's something that connects both of the projects and the insights and findings that we've heard, if somebody wants to come in and make any comments about that as well, it's much more of a free opportunity for that. Even if presenters, if you want to, tie some of the points together, it's up to you. Please just unmute and speak if you wish. Yeah. I don't see any questions in the chat yet.
I just try and pull some thoughts from, because it was so interesting to hear from the first project together with ours. And I think what both of them are showing is this rich engagement with social data, a range of ways of collecting it, of thinking about it, and making data kind of actionable. It's actionable in the school in relation to curriculum documents. It's actionable for researchers in communicating with policymakers. It's actionable in curating indicators in different ways. And I think this kind of democratization of research techniques around gender is an incredibly flourishing and generative process. And so, very, very exciting to hear about all these initiatives, and just hoping they can be continued in a range of ways as we share with each other on this.
That's a great summary and a great conclusion, Elaine. I know there's a question from Aksa about the gender equality patterns in matriarchal societies like in Tibet. So I don't know if anyone who's present here today wants to put in a response in the chat to Aksa, if you worked on matriarchal societies, and also any insights coming out from the data that you already work with. But if there's no further questions or comments, maybe we can conclude, we can wrap up. My colleague Yasmina is going to share a short link to a survey in the end. So just if you get a moment, please fill that in. This was our first Knowledge Cafe for the sub-region, so feedback will be really helpful. Nisa, yes, please come in.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to add to Elaine's comment.
Yeah,
as
sure.
someone who participates or who facilitated the workshop in identifying the indicators, I found the democratization process that Elaine mentioned is very, very interesting. And I agree that it's a very innovative approach. And one thing that I learned from the process is that when you meet the teachers, because we know that it is very important, the reason why we collect data in education is to help teachers, to help educators, to improve their practices, to provide better services for the children. But if you just go to the field and ask, hey, what do you think the indicators that we need to have in terms of gender equality? Of course, it was like, what are you talking about? What do we care about the indicators? They don't even care about data, because for them, it's just, why are we talking about data? Let's talk about improvement. Let's talk about program. Let's talk about strategies, how to make things better. But so that the process itself, to increase awareness about the importance of use of data, why we need to identify indicators is I think, very useful process, and it's very enlightening. That's all I want to say.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Nisa. Okay, then. So, yeah, we will wrap up. Please keep an eye out for our forthcoming knowledge cafes and other activities. We hope to see many of you there. We will be putting up this recording on YouTube, and I believe colleagues Matthias and others have helpfully shared a number of resources in the chat. So we'll try and put them all up as well and share them with the group. So yeah, thanks very much. Thanks to all the presenters. Thanks to UNESCO for the support with the collaboration, and everybody else who joined today for taking the time. I hope this was a really insightful session for all of you. And see you. Have a good afternoon, good evening. Bye.